I should never have smoked that shit on the plane. Now I'm in an underwater society run by an Ayn Rand fetishist. What's up, game? And welcome to another installment of the critically acclaimed series, Review, enjoyed by 8 people worldwide. In this installment, we're going to take a look at one of the best games from one of the best years in video game history. 2007 was one of those years that just couldn't miss. Team Fortress 2, Portal, Half-Life 2, Episode 2, Mass Effect, The Witcher, Call of Duty 4, and even more, and yet the game in question still managed to stand out. Biosock is the spiritual successor to the System Shock series from the 90s, whose gameplay was that of a first-person shooter with RPG elements, together with hacking and a story about an abandoned space station crawling with various enemies, controlled by an AI. In stark contrast to Biosock's gameplay was that of a first-person shooter with RPG elements, hacking minigames, and a story about an abandoned city at the bottom of the ocean, crawling with various enemies controlled by a powerful man. The second installment in the System Shock series has been lauded as one of the greatest games of all time, and so has the original Biosock. What connects these two besides similar game design and story is a myth, a legend, a mythical figure. It's Ken Levine. From Flushing, New York. Flushing New York straight down the toilet. Who has worked on such titles such as Thief, The Dark Project, and SWAT 4? Oh, and of course System Shock 2. So yeah, kind of a big deal. Though not credited as a lead game designer on Biosock, he basically was, considering a lot of the game design was imported over from System Shock 2, where he is credited as one of the lead designers and writers. Biosock takes place in Rapture, an underwater city created by Andrew Ryan, who wanted a society
where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small.
A city removed from the world and its limitations, and now a city which has fallen into decay after a civil war. You take upon the role of Jack, your everyday run-of-the-mill himbo, except this hot piece of ass has no ass at all, only a pair of arms. Don't let the so-called photo evidence fool you. The game takes place in 1960, and as we all know, these were extremely hard times for the bodiless, and they were forced to Photoshop their pictures, so this photo evidence proves nothing. Jack is on a plane, which crashes. I was going to say it crashed because of the sheer weight of his ass, but considering he is bodiless, I have to say it's because the pilot was getting hit by his co-pilot. Luckily for Jack, there are many benefits to being bodiless, such as not having organs, which means he survives the crash with ease. Everybody else succumbs to being able-bodied though. As you hear the screams, you start to feel, oh look, a lighthouse. Oh look, a submarine.
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question. Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose rapture. A city where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, rapture can become your city as well.
Now that you're on Rapture, you may be asking yourself, where the hose at?
Is it someone new?
This is a splicer, one of many citizens of Rapture who got addicted to a chemical substance called Adam, which allowed them to bypass the boundaries of nature in incredible ways by rewriting their genetic material, but at the cost of mental and physical deterioration. So yeah, they're crack addicts. After your introduction to inner city culture, you're introduced to your first friend, Atlas, an absolute lad at the bottom of the ocean, and one that is keen to strike a partnership with you. After you make acquaintances, and a little more, you find a wrench.
Engineer game thing.
No, unfortunately not, but you can still hit stuff with it. You make your way further into the city, where you bump into a vending machine of sorts, with a big and nice syringe. So like any good God-fearing American, you pump that shit straight into your veins with no hesitation whatsoever.
Let's fucking go!
Steady now. Your genetic code is being rewritten. Just hold on and everything will be fine.
You fall off a balcony in the dumbest way possible, but then again, you merely are a set of arms, so you're completely fine, but now you can shoot lightning through your hands, and can use your new ability to revive broken doors, and zap underwater junkies, and multiple of them if they stand in a body of water. But I mean, basically you all are in a big pool of water at all times. I mean, look outside a window. That which was in that syringe was a chemical substance called Adam. The exact same stuff the splicers are using. What you have acquired through Adam is called a plasmid, and there are many to choose from the further you advance through the game. You also manage to sniff out a gun. You may just be a pair of arms, but those arms salute the red, white and blue, and the gun goes.
There's another way to get there. Head to medical. What are you waiting for? Go!
After being introduced to the setting and basic gameplay mechanics, you eventually meet the man behind it all, Andrew Ryan.
So tell me, friend, which one of the bitches said to you?
After your little chit-chat, Ryan lets every crack splicer in Rapture know that you have some Adam on you, and you make your way out of there. Oh, I almost forgot. In this opening section, you're introduced to two of the most important elements of Biosock, Big Daddies and Little Sisters. A little sister is a genetically altered little girl, whose purpose is to produce and gather Adam. They produce Adam by getting special sea slugs, the producers of the liquid Adam, found near Rapture and planted in them. Okay, Ken. Producing even larger quantities of Adam when spliced together, and around the end of Rapture's golden age, during the Civil War, they were tasked with gathering remaining Adam from fallen splicers. The only problem is that they cannot protect themselves. That's where the Big Daddies come in. They are both mentally altered to be dependent on the other, and you get a first-hand example of how their relationship works. Later on, you encounter a lone little sister whose Big Daddy has passed, and here you also encounter their creator, Dr. Tenenbaum. She threatens to shoot you, but Atlas argues with her, and in the end, she throws something to you, a thing which will allow you to harvest the little sister's Adam without hurting them. Here you're presented with two choices: rescue her, aka harvest the little sister's Adam without hurting her, and turning her into a normal girl, but only getting a small amount of Adam in return, or harvesting her completely and ultimately taking her life, but getting as much Adam as possible. These choices are connected with what ending you'll get, and it's very black and white, which is fitting considering the time period. Of course, you choose the first option, sparing her and securing her a childhood. No, fuck that, come here you little shit. And together with your new friend Atlas and your questionable morals, you go on a journey to stop Andrew Ryan and rescue Atlas's family in the process, and then getting the hell out of Rapture. Biosock does a great job of introducing you to its story, world and gameplay. While on the subject of gameplay, let's go more in depth. Biosock's gameplay is simple, but very enjoyable. In combat you have 3 different types of weapons: your wrench, various firearms, and of course your numerous plasmids. They all have their own advantages and disadvantages, and they can be combined in whichever way you'd like. And your firearms are all incredibly satisfying to use, which is something a lot of games, especially first-person shooters, don't get right. There's weight behind them all, and the sound design is just mwah. All your weapons are upgradable at weapon upgrade stations, which are scattered throughout Rapture. But they only grant you one upgrade per station, so you have to figure out what weapons work for you and which ones don't. Your weapons are not the only ones that are upgradable, your plasmids are as well. These are upgraded at the before mentioned Atom vending machines, called Gatherer's Gardens. Here you can spend your Atom on upgrading your plasmids and acquiring new ones, ranging from shooting fire through your hands to freezing your enemies into ice sculptures. Plasmids, as part of the Biosock lore, came shortly after the discovery of Atom and its properties, and were shipped to Rapture citizens as a next step in evolution. I can see how catching fire from your fingertips would be helpful, as you could quickly light a cigarette, especially considering the game takes place in 1960, the golden age of acquiring smoking-related health problems. And telekinesis is very helpful too if you want to grab something out of reach. But why the fuck would you want to shoot bees out of your hands, Ken? But bees are not the only part of the next step in evolution. You can also spend Atom on yourself, upgrading your character's abilities and so on, such as health, physical abilities, etc. But where do you get Atom? Well, from little sisters of course. But just get past the big daddies first. Many games have boss battles, and Bioshock does as well. But the only one that is not optional is the one at the very end. You can choose when and how you want to engage a big daddy. They will never attack you outright, only if you strike first or bother the little sister. Although there was one point the opposite did happen to me. I completed a quest for a character, and while watching his animation and listening to him speak, a big daddy out of nowhere bum rushed me. Strange, I thought, so loaded the save again. Everything was fine, until it was 2 attacking me instead of 1, and it was quite chaotic. The NPC didn't give a damn though, because he was in the midst of being hyper-fixated on his art, while I was being pummeled in the background. And then I accidentally shot him, and now I have 2 big daddies, and some weirdo, trying to kill me on the bottom of the ocean. But other than that, I personally had a great time. Besides big daddies, you have your common splicer, which come in many variations. Some of them are straight up crawling the ceiling. You will not believe the amount of unopened chips I have managed to find. So you're telling me that a bunch of motherfuckers on the bottom of the ocean, with no connection to the outside world, out of their damn minds on sea slug juice, aren't going to get the munchies? Yeah, okay Ken. Besides these chips, you also got first aid kits, Eve hypos, which replenish your mana when you use plasmids, but also Chechnya vodka? Ken, you insensitive. How do you think this makes Kadyrov feel? Scavenging and looking for supplies is a big part of Bioshock, and it's obvious that they went for a survival horror-esque type of gameplay. But what made those type of games succeed was making the supplies scarce and scattered, giving you the feeling of accomplishment upon finally finding some, and forcing you to be smart with your use of these supplies, as you have no way of knowing when you find some again. Not with Bioshock though. Even on the hardest difficulty you will rarely have to worry about running out of supplies, as you will either find it stashed away in a corner, or you will loot it off enemies. And for most of the game you can be pretty reckless about your spending of supplies. One of the few times you will want to save supplies is if you're eyeing a fight with a big daddy, and even if you run out of supplies, especially first aid kits. Splices are avoidable if you're smart about it. And that's not to say that Bioshock is an easy game. It does provide you with a challenge, but if you play it smart, it becomes very manageable. So just play the opposite of me. A way of playing smarter is investing in hacking, and hacking the old turrets and security cameras throughout Rapture to work in your favor, so you won't have to fight alone. And when you do die, you will immediately respawn in what Bioshock calls a Vita chamber, and you can return to battle almost immediately, depending on how close the Vita chamber is. And if you dealt damage to the enemies who slew you, their health won't regenerate. This includes big daddies too. So in reality, if fighting took place right next to a Vita chamber, you could simply just not use your first aid kits, and just respawn again and again. But Bioshock is fun, and does provide a challenge on the highest difficulty, but it should be harder, as it will go along greatly with the game's setting, mood, and atmosphere. This is truly Bioshock's backbone, and while you will meet plenty of interesting characters along the way, none of them will compare to the game's main character, Rapture. Adorned with art deco as far as the eye can see, Rapture manages to surprise you while still being familiar throughout the game, meaning that it maintains core elements in the art design while still mixing it up just enough to keep you interested, but not so much that it overwhelms you with new visuals. This is in contrast with many other games that, while being in possession of very big, beautiful and detailed worlds, often leave their players overwhelmed and confused of where to start, and it takes their focus away from the main goal of the game. Rapture is filled to the brim with sights to see, loot to gather, and secrets to uncover, but you as a player is never overwhelmed, and you're always aware of your goal, while also engaging with everything Rapture has to offer. Everything in the world you expect to see has been taken into account, and Bioshock does a great job of answering your questions. From where the city gets its power and electricity from, how it manages to have breathable air year-round, and to how Rapture's citizens live their lives, where they live, work, and enjoy themselves. And everything you see makes sense for it to be there. The only complaint I have is that there is not a single business in the city that provides its citizens with D vitamins from artificial light, despite it being an obvious market to tap into. Think about it. A city on the bottom of the ocean with no access to direct sunlight year-round. People would have to pay for access to D vitamins, because if they didn't, it would directly affect them in a negative way. So, sorry Ken, that's on you. Though from 2007, Bioshock is still a sight to behold and holds up graphically. Although the textures aren't the sharpest, you will still be taken back by it all. And even in the areas that Bioshock is lacking in graphically, it doesn't stick out, and rather, it blends in with the game's art style, which is one of both beauty and ugliness. The one thing that truly does stick out graphically is that sometimes when you look through a window, you can clearly see that it's merely a 2D image of Rapture, and it briefly breaks the illusion of the game. Bioshock's overall style is another thing about it that has to be applauded. Everything from the character models, the world, to the little intros you get whenever you acquire a new plasmid is done in the style of the time period. And this overall commitment to sell the time period is commendable, and even the science fiction side of things in Bioshock is done in a way that it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie from said period. Rapture feels both dead and alive. Dead, because it is apparent that the Rapture of old is no more, but alive, because despite this, the city is still crawling with life. Just like the city, its citizens of old are dead, and what is left is whatever their hopes and dreams were before coming to the city, their old self, twisted by Adam. In this regard, you could compare Rapture to Hollywood, a city of dreams of sorts, attracting people from far and wide, but ultimately leaving them crushed and a shell of themselves. This is perfectly illustrated in the characters you meet on your way. From a mad plastic surgeon obsessed with being something more, to an artist using Rapture's downfall as his own art project, and silencing any critics along the way. But you won't be interacting with them one-on-one most of the time. Instead, you learn more about them and others by collecting and listening to audio diaries scattered around the city. This way, your game never gets interrupted by cutscenes, save for a few key moments in the story, and the voice acting and writing is phenomenal. The writing is another thing that catapults Bioshock into greatness, and while the main story in itself is very good, it's everything surrounding it that makes it special. From the characters to the backstories to the lore of the city itself, it's all very well done, and almost all of it is optional. It's you who chooses to go out and find out more, not the game forcing you. And after your first few audio diaries, you'll be more addicted to them than the splicers are to Adam. Trust me, I've developed a problem and it's really hitting me and my family hard. Finding out about the origins of the little sisters and big daddies is one of the very best parts of playing Bioshock, and their story encapsulates the essence of Bioshock's story and atmosphere. Tragically fascinating. Accompanying and uplifting the game's atmosphere is its soundtrack, both original and licensed. Bioshock's theme, The Ocean Upon His Shoulders, is a great example of already from the very start instilling a specific feeling in your players. And the other tracks follow its example, and Biosock creates a great contrast between the past and the present of the city by having old music playing the radios and reminding you of what Rapture once was through the music and what it has become through the visuals. And on top of that, it also just absolutely slaps. Biosock was made by people who truly cared, and everywhere you go, this is obvious. And the game is enjoyed by people equally as passionate as its creators around the world. And they show this passion through fan art, fan works and the likes. Biosock left an impact on popular culture, and was one among many other games that showed what the medium was truly capable of. And to this day it's still one of the best to ever do it. So please, would you kindly play Biosock?
Arcade didn't have the stuff.
When will you ever learn to take instruction? I'm coming down there, little wolf. Coming down to teach you to dance.
2 a.m. It's a self-defense situation.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.